Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center, and welcome to Knife AQ number 47, the knife series where I answer all your questions, whether they're sharp or dull. This week, we're talking about things that go into a good knife design, some fixed blades for concealed carry, and some unusual knife designs that you might want to check out. So let's check them out. All right, as always, housekeeping up front. Thank you everyone for submitting your questions in the comments for this series. And if you have a question of your own, don't forget to drop it down below this video as well for a chance to be featured on a future episode. So starting out this week, we have a question from Dane Cassidy. Hey DCA, what is your favorite and best double detent knife? I'm really interested in the Civivi Stylum. All right, cool. We'll start with that Stylum. It's here. It's about $60. And the double detent moniker comes from the fact that even though some people call these, or some companies out there call this type of thing a slip joint, it isn't really. Essentially, you've got two detent bars on the inside, or two bars on the inside of the handle with a detent ball at the end of each. And it gives it a little bit, but not a ton, of detent at the open position. And some use a single detent, so I've been trying to get away from like the double detent name. Unfortunately, there's no good standard name for this out there yet. I've been calling it a detent joint, and we kind of hope that catches on because it kind of communicates that it's non-locking, but also communicates that it's not a traditional slip joint with the normal back spring there. But anyway, when it comes to this style of knife, I have to admit that I'm a little bit leery of them, or a little bit hesitant in general, because it doesn't take a lot to close that blade. Essentially, it's just the friction of the detent balls. And as such, very few of these designs really do it for me. I mean, the Stylum is perfectly fine for this style of knife. Good materials too. You've got micarta for the handles, 10CR series stainless for the blade, which metallurgically is equivalent to something equivalent to VG10, which is a Japanese steel, very good steel. And price-wise, $60, so pretty affordable. But the thing I personally makes me a little wary is if you're cutting and that blade closes, there's not a lot to stop it from closing on your finger. You can get a little bit if you choke up around the pivot and maybe into that choil area. There's a little bit of your finger in the way. But my absolute favorite of this style of knife, because it is, they take that safety concern into account, is the small non-locking Archeo from Artisan Cutlery, which is a KnifeCenter exclusive. Now it does have a locking pin that you can use, but even without that, because you have a flipper tab, you've got that bit of protection there, both when you're using it to keep your fingers from sliding forward, but also if the blade does close, your finger is going to stop the movement of the blade. I've talked about this knife a lot on this channel, and the reason being is it is, in my mind, the best execution of this detent joint style of knife anywhere because of the safety measures, quite frankly. Materials are good too. This particular one, we've got marbled carbon fiber and a VG10 Damascus. Again, similar stuff there. Price-wise, it is more expensive. This guy's about $120. But the other cool thing about these detent joint knives is you can flick them. You can flick all of them closed. They all work pretty well in that regard. But you also get things like the Archeo with the flipper tab. So you can fidget with it if that's your thing. It's just as convenient as any locking folder out there. Even if you never use the pin on the back, I mean, you can take that lanyard right off and still have a very safe version of this style of knife. Next question comes from Giyugana, probably. Did becoming a knife designer change the way you look at knives now? For example, are there any knives that didn't impress you before but you really appreciate now? Absolutely. Undertaking knife designs of my own, and even before that, just getting into making knives on the side a little bit, it changes what you're aware of when it comes to a knife. So you're seeing things that you might not have seen before. You're paying attention to details, and you're seeing things that you know the difficulty of that you may not have known the difficulty of before. On the construction side, there's that, but on the design side, the more you play around with shapes and the more you try to get the thing you're designing to do what you want it to do, the more you realize it's awful hard to do a shape that looks simple, but there's a lot going on to it. And I guess that's kind of an element I strive for in a way. And it's for reasons like that I picked this Civivi Badlands Vagabond as kind of my favorite sub $50 EDC knife right now. I see things here in terms of subtle turns of an angle, little bits of contouring in exactly the right place, and just, the overall feel in the hand that really make me appreciate this knife. And it's not something that most people, I don't think, would pick up just from a photo or from reading a spec sheet. You think of something like the Civivi Elementum, which is practically its own archetype right now. D2 blade, G10 handles, flipper, ball bearings, hits all the spec sheets just right, but this knife right here feels so much more alive and more refined of a shape to me than the Elementum is, as good a knife as the Elementum happens to be. Here you've got 9CR stainless, injection molded handles, but in my mind and in my hands, I think this is the better knife. And maybe I wouldn't have picked up on that as much if I weren't so heavily involved in designing my own things, but maybe it is. But anyway, hope that helps. It's just going to be my refrain from now on when I don't know how to end a question. Hope that helps.
I'll just copy and paste that.
Hope that helps. Next question comes from Tom Freeth. Hey DCA, can you recommend a fixed blade that is good for concealment? Would like it to carry horizontal or as a neck knife and have good EDC and self-defense capabilities for $50 or less. Sure, I've got two here, two very different knives. First one I think is a great little utility knife. The Artisan Cutlery Sea Snake comes in right under 50 bucks, but this modified Wharncliffe shape cuts aggressively and it definitely pierces aggressively as well. So you're gonna get all your needs out of that very nicely. It points very naturally because the tip of that knife is down a little bit, and it slices pretty nicely too, even because it is fairly thin. G10 for the handles, a couple different colors. This is the OD green, which I am partial to, and RPM 9 powder metallurgy steel. Good amount of performance there, especially in this price range. Sheath-wise, it is Kydex and it is set up for neck carry right out of the box, but with the holes here, you could slap a Tech-Lock or a Civivi T-clip on there and carry that horizontally on the belt very easily. Now, if you want something with some belly, or if you want something that's more outdoors oriented, the Becker BK11 is top of my list for this price range. Drop point blade, full flat grind, 1095 CV carbon steel, and these things, have been proven on the field of combat as well. I mean, Ethan has told me some stories of service members who have put these into use very effectively. But on top of that, you've got a pretty slicey blade profile, especially if you strip the coating here on the leading edge of the blade, and it's just gonna be very tough for some heavier uses as well. Plenty of finger guard here at the front, wire breaker / bottle opener at the back. If you want to upgrade things, you can get some micarta handle scales to thicken things up, or you can do a paracord wrap if you like. As far as the sheath goes, it's a little bit on the bulkier side, but it is set up for neck carry right out of the box. Well, I shouldn't say that. It comes with a lanyard cord to carry it neck style if you wish, but you could also carry this horizontal with the addition of K-Bar's TDI belt clip, which would slap on right there. All right, next question comes from JonesBen13, who says, DCA, I'm not sure I've ever heard you mention the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Gil Hibben. What are your thoughts, if any, about his designs? Is there a place for his work? Could you ever see yourself giving a recommendation of his pieces? If so, which? Right off the bat, is there a place for his work? Absolutely. I will say that he's one of those designers that definitely leans into the more, or tends to lean with a lot of his designs, or at least the stuff he's most well known for, into the realm of the fantastical. And there's absolutely a place for that. Funny story, our buyer here at the KnifeCenter used to work for a place called Chesapeake Knife and Tool. And I remember myself as a little kid walking through the mall, and when there were knife stores in the mall still, walking past the Chesapeake Knife and Tool and seeing some knives out there. I had no idea what they were. Looking back now, I know they were some of Gil Hibben's fantasy knives, and I was just enthralled with those things. So, Gil Hibben at least has played a part in me being a knife fanatic, and I'm sure a lot of folks out there have seen his stuff and thought, wow, that's cool. I mean, I got a knife right here. What is this called anyway? I don't even know. The Hellfire Double Shadow Knife. Looks like something a Klingon would carry in Star Trek, and this would have been right up my alley. And it's cool. Is it practical? I tend to not think so. But is there a place for that sort of thing? Absolutely. Now, when it comes to making a recommendation on his knives, again, like I mentioned before, I kind of bring my knife design biases into anything I pick up and into the way I respond to things. So for me, it's kind of hard for me to go, this is good for this or this is good for this, because what this is actually really good for is a smile. And it does a great job at that. In terms of practicality, there are some good designs out there. I'm not as familiar with his custom stuff as I should or would like to be, quite honestly. But a lot of the production stuff with his name on it tends to cater more towards the collectors rather than the users. But I think like the Expendables knives he did, the Bowie knives, I think those are pretty cool. His Ulu is pretty cool. So yeah, maybe take a look at those, see if those strike your fancy. All right, next question comes from Sam Reinhart. DCA, can you suggest a slip joint or small backlock pocket knife that could be closed by an 86-year-old? My old man can't work a liner lock anymore, so he can't get his knife closed once he opens it. Thanks. I've got another Civivi today, and that is the Rustic Gent. It is a lockback, but it also has some slip joint vibes, so it kind of straddles the line on what you're asking for. They're about $76 for this version right here, 3-inch blade, D2 steel, carbon fiber, and micarta handles, backlock. And we had a guy last week actually asking for locking knives with a half stop. This is another one that I knew I was forgetting. I showed a Boker last week, or no, it was a Kaiser, sorry, the Kaiser Slicer. And I knew there was one I was forgetting, and I knew as soon as you guys in the comments spoke it that I was gonna remember it, and this is that knife. Really cool, they're put together nicely, keen hollow grind, pretty easy to operate. You can either hit it with your fingertip, or if mobility is a little bit less in the hand, just kind of gripping it and pushing in with the heel of your thumb is gonna work pretty nicely. No pocket clip on this guy, but it does come with a pocket sheath equipped with a pocket clip. So it's not gonna be floating around inside the pocket, accidentally coming open or anything like that. But all in all, I think this would be a pretty good recommendation. All right, now's the point in the show where we bring Seth on for he and I to both answer a question together. And although he's not really convinced by the title, I think I want to start calling this segment, Is That a Knife in Your Pocket?
Or are you just happy to see me?
Can be both. I like the title, I don't know.
I'm back, hi.
What do you guys think of it out there?
Style icon. Copycat.
Question for today comes from Lynx. DCA, what are some out of the ordinary knives that fall under $100? I have had my eye on the CRKT Nerk tie, and I currently own a CRKT Fossil. Both pretty cool knives, both a little out of the ordinary, very similar blade shapes actually. So he asks, if you don't mind, show me some knives that fit this bill if you can. P.S. Tell Seth I said hi. Hi. That's why I brought him on. So as usual, we're going to try to each guess what the other person brought out, and then reveal what we have. So we're looking for something slightly unusual. I'm going to say, did you pick the Kershaw Speed Bump?
No. This was a difficult one to game out the other person's choice. More so than any question so far, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I did bring a Speed Bump just for...
Oh, good. That's cool.
Right? It's a little bit different. Interesting locking mechanism going on. But this wasn't my pick, but I was hoping it would be your pick.
I was thinking in the kind of Ken Onion zone, we could call it. We got a similar sort of swooping blade, sort of detailed handles. The pocket clip on that one is pretty extra.
It's very, very old school Ken Onion right there for sure as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, I kind of didn't think you picked that, but I wanted to think you picked that.
I like it. I didn't even find that on my search.
Oh man.
It was difficult to know even where to begin, and I came up with some weird stuff.
All right, well, we'll do reveal.
Okay. My pick is Le Duc.
Ah, you went fixed blade. Okay.
Yeah. And this is well under $100 too.
Like, what, 30?
$23.50. Yeah. So this is a Jeremy Hossam design. I'm sorry, Jerry Hossam.
Outdoor Edge.
Outdoor Edge, Le Duc, please. Very wild looking, but when you get it in hand, it makes sense. I would describe it almost like that first summer day where you put on your flip-flops again, and those first few minutes, it feels really weird in between your toes. Like the way that handle fits in between your pinky and fourth finger reminds me of that feeling, but it works. And it works because, in your grip, most of the strength and control, well, maybe not most, but a surprising amount comes from
those back two fingers.
Those back two fingers. And so it just works. You have a lot of control over this blade.
I think my hands are a little bit too big for it.
I was going to ask
honest.
you.
Yeah, it feels like a little, if you're slightly larger or larger hands out there. Yeah, like I keep, like it feels like it's making my pinky do this over and over, like on a repetitive motion.
It could just be the weirdness of this ergonomic feature. I would, in fact, if you want to borrow this and give it a shot, actually putting it to use, I would be curious to see what you think.
I never hate using a fixed blade.
Yeah.
So that's your guy, huh?
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
I picked it both because I sort of wanted to highlight this knife. I think it is weird. I think it's great. I think if you have a curiosity for knives, you should be open to trying something like this just to see if it works.
And any kind of unusual shape that you might think is a little odd, it can be fun to try out to see if you're just missing something.
Yeah, and so for somebody who's looking for something with a little extra flavor and flair, I think maybe Le Duc might appeal to them.
Could be.
The sheath that comes with this, let me unclip it from my belt here. So the sheath that comes with this is rather nice as well. It fits in with this tab that locks it in place.
Oh, cool.
So I like to carry it upside down, and then when you need it, it's already in your grip. This carries better than some folders I have to say.
Very interesting. I would have never thought of this I would have never thought you would have picked this for this question because I was sticking to the folders basically for this one. But
I went weird with it.
You got weird with it, man. It actually kind of feels good between these two fingers if you're doing some tip down work. Maybe if you're doing, I don't know, it's not a kitchen-y knife, but like it feels like you could do some things on a cutting surface.
Definitely.
Like that, or even using the tip. That helps it go down really nicely.
Yeah, funny story, actually. I went on a very hastily planned camping trip. So hastily that, in fact, this was the only utensil that I brought.
Ooh.
Yeah. No forks, no knives, no spoons, no plates.
This would be a good hiking knife.
It was all the Le Duc, and it did fine. I even batoned a tiny piece of wood with it.
And clearly it did just fine.
Yeah.
That's cool. No, I could absolutely see in that being another cool hiking knife option. For sure. I mean, it doesn't weigh nearly nothing.
Yeah.
That's English. Anyway. All right, what do you think I picked for Mr. Lynx here? Mr. or Mrs., we're not sure.
I was having fun with the weirdness. I was really looking for something that had, much like the speed bump, as sort of an alternate locking mechanism, or just interesting little curious feature. So the knife I think you picked is the Mazarin Scambo.
I don't think I've ever even seen this knife before. What is this guy?
Well, maybe I should just hand it to you and see if you can open it.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
This is like some Instagram shaming me
yeah,
video or something.
This is an ambush.
This is totally an ambush. All right, we got something here. Thomas is going to have to speed this footage up, I have a feeling.
2x, 3x. Okay, no, you got it.
All right.
There you go.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, easy peasy once you figure it out.
Pretty safe.
Very safe.
Because of the, even if the pivot fails, you've got this in the way to hold it up in there. Very interesting.
Yeah. I had never before seen this knife either before I started hunting to answer this question. And just the combination of the curious opening mechanism and the name just stuck out to me.
And still a
And I thought it
liner lock.
might have stuck out to you too, but I bet you didn't even see it. Yeah.
I didn't. I really didn't. Okay, well that is not what I saw. It was a little bit tough because Lynx kind of seeded the question with 2 CRKTs.
Yeah.
And
Which I completely ignored.
and they kind of have a really good corner, especially at this price point, for kind of the slightly interesting, slightly off things. You know?
Definitely.
So I wound up staying in the CRKT family, actually. And I picked, for my knife, the snap lock.
Oh, cool.
Very unusual opening method here as well. It's a little fiddly until you get used to it, but you essentially move this cam, or whatever you want to call it, here at the top, and the blade spins out from the side.
That's so cool.
Like so. And then closes the same way.
Yeah.
I love these things, are so cool, and I forgot about them
Yeah.
until doing this search as well. I mean, price on these, where do they come in? I have it here somewhere, about $45, so similar to these 2 other CRKTs. Ed Van Hoy design.
Nothing looks like this. Nothing works like this. Yeah. And CRKT's been making a variation of their, it's called the snap lock, for years.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a part of their catalog for as long as I've been into knives.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit, I don't want to say it's kind of like hair raising to do the one hand opening, just because it opens so differently than any other pocket knife out there. But once you get into the flow of it and get it, get used to it, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm going to keep using 2 hands for now.
Yeah.
Since this is not my knife. But yeah, it is. I'll agree with you. It is surprisingly easy to operate, even though it looks like such an impractical gimmick. It is a gimmick. I mean, for sure. That's what makes it look like this.
But again, there is a degree of safety in this as well, because if it's not going to close this way on your fingers.
No. And this is another one to just hand to somebody
and see what they do.
and see what they think about it, how they open it, how they try.
Because the other cool thing about that lock is it only works if you're pushing the right way. Like if I push from this side, it's trying to close the blade further. So it's not actually going to open unless you're pushing in the way the finger naturally would. And it's the same thing on the unlock. Like if you push this, well, it's going to go that way. But it's not going to close.
Ambidextrous.
But it's not going to close because the clip is in the way there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just cool. Definitely unusual. More unusual than these other 2 knives, that's for sure.
That's a cool one. There's a reason it's been in the catalog for so long.
Yeah. Glad to see that it still is. All right, well, that's all we got. Why don't you make like your hairs and buzz off?
That was good. Bye.
All right, now we get to start the lightning round for today, which comes from Jitoshi Sagara. At least the first question comes from Jitoshi Sagara. It's not going to be so much of a lightning round if I stop to explain. Anyway.
Getting longer.
Dear DCA, whenever I hear hard use survival knife, my heart goes to brands like K-Bar or Cold Steel or Condor. Is this correct? Sure. Certainly good brands. Are they the only hard use, heavy duty, solid survival knife makers? Only ones? No. I mean, Essie. Can't overlook those guys. Tops. Feldknieven. Becker. Although technically Becker's made by K-Bar, but I don't think that's what you meant. All of these guys are kind of world-class and highly respected makers of hard-use survival knives, and definitely worth you taking a look at. We actually did a video on survival knives a little bit over a year ago, I want to say, that I'm actually pretty proud of. I'm really happy with the information in. So we'll leave a link to that, and I talk about all of these brands except for Tops, not because they didn't deserve to be there, but I think on the day we were filming, we didn't have what I wanted to show in inventory, so unfortunately they didn't make it into the video. But it's a good video nonetheless, and go check that guy out. All right, Roman Carlisle says, or asks, I'm looking for a high quality folding knife that is spring assisted but has a lock that will keep my fingers out of the path of the blade when closing it. First and foremost comes to mind Benchmade. They make assisted versions of their Axis lock. Barrage, the Emissary are famously Axis assists. The Arcane, I think, is one of my favorites right now. $230, 3.2 inch blade, S90V, and Fingers stay out of the path of the blade. Well, they always will if you do the two-handed close. But assisted flipper, you just got a small tab here, but that's enough. You got a secondary safety on the side. Some of their guys come with a secondary safety on the back, but you can close it one-handed very easily without your fingers getting in the way. If some of those are a little too much money for you, anything from SOG that has the AT designation at the end of their name, such as the Aegis AT, Trident AT, or the Flash AT, which I have right here, which is only about $75. Kind of the same deal. You've got a crossbar lock here, just like the Axis, or not just like the Axis, but same kind of operation. So you can do that safe open and close. It is assisted, and you've got a spine mounted safety. Doesn't work in the open position, only works in the closed position. The Benchmade locks will work in either, which is kind of nice. But both of those are great knives, and they're gonna do what you're looking for. All right, next question comes from Tommy. Hey DCA, I've noticed that companies have differences in what they call their plastic handled knives. Is there any difference between GTX and Grivery? I find it weird. Benchmade puts different names for these and wonder if they are any different. Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. Like Grivery, Norel GTX, all these other things are all a bit different. Some materials, like you've got FRN, are fiberglass reinforced nylon. Grivery is also a glass reinforced nylon product, but they all have kind of different properties, like under the hood from an engineering standpoint, that are gonna make a difference to the companies building these things. In terms of what it means to you or me, the end user, they all feel about the same, quite honestly, and they're all gonna kind of perform about the same, at least in the context of pocket knives. All right, lastly, we now come to our most serious question of the day, which comes from Prince Wojak. David, what outdoor knife would you suggest that will also be good to fend off a possible attack by a Sasquatch or Yeti? Maybe we just found the purpose for the Hellfire from
We might have done that.
Gil Hibben. Actually, no. I take that back. The answer is clearly the Sword Carcass Splitter.
When it's upside down?
KnifeCenter.
Go.
Yeah, at least this has some animal like background to it. Splits livestock. Carefully. Hope that helps. And that's all the time we've got for today's episode. Thanks everyone for your questions, and don't forget to leave your new questions down below for us to go through and pick through for a future video. If you want to get your hands on any of these guys, we'll leave you links in the description so you can head over to KnifeCenter.com and make sure you sign up for the Knife Rewards program so that when you put your money down on one of these knives, you'll earn some free money to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center, signing off. See you next time.